Today we're going to talk about building a prepared pantry, and we are going to talk about protein sources. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Jess from the blog siloandsage.com, and here we talk about all things homestead, homeschool, and handmade. And today we're going to talk about the pantry. If you've been around for a little bit, you know that I am pretty passionate about building a prepared pantry. Now, there's a difference between building a pantry and building a prepared pantry. Your everyday pantry, those would be the things that you would use every day. A prepared pantry, that's something that you're building for a little bit more long term, for emergency, for a job loss, for inflation, rising food costs, for if some unexpected illness comes up or a snowstorm that you're stuck in your house for a long time. You may be preparing for something that I am not preparing for. If you live in Florida, you might be preparing for a hurricane. I'm in Wisconsin. We do not get hurricanes here, but we do get snowstorms or ice storms. You need to figure out, what are you preparing for and what do you need in your pantry, and how long are you preparing for? Are you preparing for a couple weeks, a couple months, a year if someone lost their job? Build the pantry that works for you. But when we're talking about a prepared pantry, you have to think about a balanced nutritional profile, okay? You can't just prepare with canned fruits. If you are going to live off of your pantry for 2, 3, 6 months, even a year, you're not going to be able to live off of canned fruits. As pretty as those home canned goods are, you need to have other things in your pantry. So today we are going to talk about protein sources. Now, I do not live on a full-fledged farm, okay? So I am not at this point raising my own meats. I'm not raising, I don't have a dairy cow. I have laying hens and a garden. So I need to source my proteins outside of my property for the most part. Now, I do have eggs, and so one of the things that I can have in my pantry are these water glassed eggs. Now, these are really great because all you need is pickling lime and water, and you can preserve eggs that are clean and unwashed, and you can preserve them for a really long time. These eggs here have been on my shelf. This label says July. There's one back here that says June. And we ate these during the winter when our hens were not laying very much, because hens slow down in the winter because they don't have a lot of sunlight. So we have already gone through 2 of these, and we are bursting with eggs right now. It's just the beginning of March, and our hens are laying like crazy, and so we have not yet gone through this one. I have not decided what I'm going to do with that, if I'm going to just maybe cook up a bunch of scrambled eggs and freeze them, or feed them back to the chickens, or what I'm going to do with them. But these eggs were so great for us to have this winter when we didn't have eggs, fresh eggs coming from our hens. So I'm going to keep doing this every year. I'm going to keep preserving eggs this way, because it really was a great way for us to have a protein source in the winter. Now, these eggs are great, but we probably need to diversify a little bit, because if an egg cracks in there, it could potentially ruin the whole batch if I don't catch it in time. So I want to have some other protein sources. Now, I could buy chicken, like I could buy fresh chicken and I could can it and have it like home can it myself. Or I could go to a local farm and I could get chicken and I could preserve it that way. I could freeze chicken, which I do keep chicken in my freezer. I tend to buy whole chickens from a local farm and I just put them in my freezer. I don't buy a lot of other frozen chicken because we tend to just cook whole chicken.
Now, this is obviously not shelf stable, but we buy our beef and our pork in bulk and keep it in the freezer. And I could can it up or dehydrate beef, like if I wanted to like make beef jerky or something, and I could make it shelf stable. But buying most of our meat locally is really important to us. So we keep it in the freezer, and then we can always make it shelf stable if we don't want to rely on the freezer or generator to keep it in case of emergency. But for us, since we don't raise our own meat, this is a great option for us in buying beef and pork in bulk and, buying our chicken and buying all these meats locally so that we have these sources and have, even though it's not shelf stable, it is long-term storage. It just isn't something we could rely on in case of like a power outage or something. So we have to have a backup plan for any kind of power outage or, kind of emergency situation. And that's where making some of it shelf stable would make a lot of sense, or having generator, that sort of thing.
If there was a power outage, obviously my freezers would be one of the first things to go. So I want to have canned protein sources or dry, long-term shelf-stable protein sources. So I'm going to walk you through some of the shelf-stable protein sources. Down here in our basement, this is where we keep our long-term food storage. It's where we keep our bulk items, our home canned items. I don't keep our home canned items upstairs in our regular pantry that's in our kitchen for two reasons. Number one, I like to keep them in like a more cool, dark place. And number two, I don't want my kids to knock them off the shelves because my kids kind of like bust into our pantry and they like pull stuff down off the shelves, and I would just rather not risk it. So I keep those down here and we just come down because it's right below our kitchen and we just come right down. It's not a big deal. I also keep our store-bought canned goods. Now, we are not exclusive to home canning. We don't home can everything that we have in our pantry because we're just not at that level yet. And I think it's good to have multiple sources, multiple places where you source things. I'm not buying all of these things at one time. I'm stocking up on them a little bit at a time to build up a longer term food storage. So this one I don't keep a lot of. I happened to spot it, I think it was at Costco when I bought some foods at Costco.com online. This is pulled pork, 4 cans of pulled pork. It actually tastes pretty good. I have to say, for a long time, I was kind of anti-canned meat. Like, I thought it was kind of gross, but I've changed my tune because number one, because when you're feeding 5 boys, especially when they're getting into their teenage years, sometimes you just have to make some compromises for the sake of budget. So we prioritize certain things and we buy local when we can, especially when we're buying fresh. But when we're buying canned, we just do what we can. So we have pulled pork here that we buy. I'm pretty sure it's from Costco. Then we have chicken. We eat a lot of chicken in our house. My kids love chicken. Like I said, the only type of chicken that I usually buy is whole chicken. So this is kind of my go-to chicken for when I need like a quick and easy meal. Like if I'm not making a whole chicken or using leftovers from the whole chicken, I will pull out some of these cans. These are great for when you need a really fast meal or you need to throw it in like a casserole or something. You could easily make this into like a chicken taco. My kids could easily do this on their own. I like having these around. We don't use them on a really super regular basis, but I would say we do use them like a couple times a month. Fish. We do not eat a ton of fish. I like frozen fish for most of our fish, like tilapia, and salmon for the most part is what we eat. But I do like to keep this canned salmon just because salmon can be expensive and it's less expensive when you buy it in the canned version. I get this wild caught Alaskan salmon from Costco and we like how it tastes. So we have it a lot of times in pasta dishes and my family really likes it. So I keep a few of these on hand also, but not a ton. I would say out of these 3, the pork, the chicken, and the salmon, the chicken is what I keep the most of in stock. Beans. Beans are a good protein source also, and they are easy, especially the canned version. Now, I do not just buy canned beans. I also buy dry beans and I keep them in 5-gallon buckets because dry beans last a long time and they're really easy to store. Now, you can take dry beans and you can can them yourself. I haven't done that yet just because it's on my list of things to learn how to do or to try. I just haven't done it yet. So once I start doing that, canning my own dried beans, I will probably move away from buying them. But for now, I'm buying them because you do what you can, a little bit at a time, right? So I like to keep canned beans on hand though, because my kids really like them and it's easy for them. And then if I haven't soaked any beans or haven't cooked any beans in the Instant Pot or anything, they are really simple for them to pull out a can of black beans, for lunch, or I can quickly make up a chili dish for a potluck, or just if we're having friends over, I can quickly throw it together, and it's really, really simple. Nut butters are another great shelf-stable protein source. Now, we have a peanut allergy in our house, so we cannot have peanut butter in our house, but we do keep almond butter and sunflower butter. We do also keep a little bit of cashew butter because I really like the flavor of it, but it tends to be a little bit more expensive. So I like to buy my, if you watched my bulk prepared pantry video, 15 foods to buy in bulk, I talked about sunflower butter. We like to buy these from Azure Standard. You can also buy almond butter or cashew butter in this size too. The sunflower butter is not expensive, and it's what we eat because we have a peanut allergy. So I really like to buy these. I keep several of these because this is the one we use the most. So I keep several of these buckets on hand. And then what I also like is that you can reuse the buckets for other things. These buckets have other things in them. They won't seal like they do, you know, before you open them, but I do find they seal really well as long as you are not using them when you reuse them, that you're not using it for long-term storage. Like, they're not going to seal well enough to use for like a year of storage, but they will for a shorter term storage. Quinoa is another good non-meat source of protein that is very shelf stable. Now, what I like to do is I like to, if I'm buying it in smaller bags like this, you can transfer it to like a Mylar bag, or you can transfer it to 5-gallon or 3-gallon buckets. You can also buy quinoa in bulk from Azure Standard, which I have done before. And then when you buy it in bulk, transfer it to like a 5-gallon bucket so that it will stay for a really long time. Now, here's another protein source that people don't often think about, but bone broth is a great protein source. Now, these are like the tiniest little containers of bone broth, because when I bought it, I thought they were regular size, and they came and they were definitely not regular size. These are tiny. But I keep them on hand. Now, I make my own bone broth. Every time I make a whole chicken, I make bone broth, but we go through it pretty quickly. I tend to not even can it, because when you can homemade bone broth, it does lose a lot of the nutritional value. Like the good gelling of bone broth, you lose some of that when you can it. And so I do like to put it in the fridge, and when it makes that like fat cap on top, it actually seals that pretty well, and you can keep it in your fridge for a really long time. So I tend to just shove it in the back of my fridge, just go through it quickly enough before it goes bad, and then I keep some store-bought bone broth on my shelf. I probably at some point will decide to can, especially if we ever raised our own meat birds, I would just can my own bone broth. But since we're not doing that, it's easiest and actually pretty cost effective for me to do it this way. But normally I buy the regular size bone broth containers, not these. This just was a fluke, and just what I happen to have on my shelf right here. Another protein source that you may not think about is chickpea pasta. Now, chickpeas, obviously you can buy canned or dried chickpeas, but I'm gluten-free and one of my sons is gluten-free, so we tend to buy a lot of gluten-free pasta to keep on hand, and this is one of the ones that we like. And I like it because it also doubles as a protein source. So I keep some of this on hand. Now, obviously, when you have it in a box like this is not long-term storage. So you don't want to store things long-term just in a packaging like this. You would want to transfer it to a Mylar bag so that it could stay longer. But we're not keeping this kind of stuff, this particular pasta. We're not keeping this as long-term food storage. We're just keeping it like as like the third box that's in our basement or something. And keep in mind, we are a family of 7. So we go through the majority of this box in one meal. Now, during the month of March, I am joining up with some Instagram accounts that are sharing a pantry challenge called Stocked on Purpose. So if you look up that hashtag on Instagram, you're going to see different posts and different accounts sharing about Stocked on Purpose. And we are talking about our pantries. So the reason that we are talking about this is that we all feel that it's really important to have a prepared pantry. And we're all sharing about the different ways that we stock our pantries, because some people have full-fledged farms where they're home canning all of their things, and they are, raising their own meat, raising their own dairy cow, and they have milk coming in every day. And that's how they are stocking their pantries. And some of us are doing a combination of homegrown and home canned goods and store-bought goods. And some people are maybe doing all store-bought goods. There's no one. There's no one right way to do it. So however you decide to stock your pantry is the right way for your family. So I just think that it's really important to be looking at the different things that you need nutritionally when it comes to stocking your pantry. How much do you need for the size of your family? How long do you need it for? Because a family of 7 like mine is going to need a lot more than a family of 4. But if a family of 4 is trying to stock a year's worth of food and I'm only trying to stock 3 months worth of food, it might balance out. We might have the same amount. So these are the sort of things that we're going to talk about this month, and I'm talking about it here. We're going to talk about it over on Instagram. I would love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear about the protein sources, if there are some that I didn't mention that you stock in your pantry, what you're doing to prepare your pantry. And if you haven't already, make sure you head over to my website, go to siloandsage.com/prepare, and you can download your guide to a prepared pantry. It's totally free. It's a printable. It has inventory pages for your pantry, for your freezer, for your fridge. It's a whole list of shelf-stable items so you can start building a prepared pantry too. So if you want to know more details about this Stocked on Purpose challenge, you can head over to my Instagram, or you can just head over to siloandsage.com/prepare, and I've got a blog post all about it. And we would love for you to join in on the challenge. So if you join in, use the hashtag Stocked on Purpose. Use it here on YouTube, use it over on Instagram. We'd love to see what you are stocking in your pantry. So I'm going to come back next week with another video about the pantry, and we're going to talk about something different. We're not going to talk about protein. We're going to talk about something else. I can't remember, but we're going to talk about something else. So if you like this video, hit the thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in another video. In the meantime, keep cultivating your home. Bye, friends.